Welcome to Dialogue This Week. In this corner, we invite guests from in and out of Korea to talk about a wide variety of issues ranging from culture and sports to the latest trends around the world. Now, an NFT is a digital asset that represents real-world objects like art, music, in-game items, and videos, and this will be the topic for today. They are bought and sold online frequently with cryptocurrency, and they are generally encoded with the same underlying software as many cryptos. Now, although they've been around since 2014, NFTs gained more fame recently because they are becoming an increasingly popular way to buy and sell digital artwork. And in fact, a staggering $174 million has been spent on NFTs since November 2017. But are NFTs worth the money? Do they have any risks in terms of value? To delve deeper into these non-fungible tokens, we are joined by Christos Makridis, research professor at the School of Business of Arizona State University, who's also the CTO of multimedia art technology startup Living Opera, and Eli Tan, a reporter at CoinDesk, both via Skype. Good morning to you both. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Now first, let's start with Professor Makridis. NFTs have become a major industry with over $10 billion traded in just the third quarter of this year alone. And these tokens are a blockchain-based unit of data that allows anyone and everyone to monetize digital content. But for starters, let's start with the basics. Professor, what exactly are these tokens and how did they become such a huge industry?
No, it's a great question and a great place to start. Thank you for having me on. Just like a portrait or any type of art that might be physical, it's just in what you might hold with your hands, and you're digitizing it and uploading it up to a digital ledger that is transparent, it's immutable, and it allows for not only the buying and selling, but also trading subsequently. And one of the really big differentiators, especially given the state of the current kind of entertainment sector, is that it gives ownership to the actual artist, so that the artist that sells the content is able to reap the benefits for it, as opposed to one of the norms right now, which is often that an artist partners with a record label or partners with a big brand, and the artist themselves is not able to profit from it as much. And so I'm really excited by the opportunity that this is going to create for artists and freelancers to build sustainable revenue streams and just to express themselves, whether it's in the form of physical art or whether it's in the form of audio.
Well, that was a very clear explanation. But now let's turn to you, Eli. You reported on all kinds of interesting items making their way to the blockchain. Now, what drew global attention and made NFTs the big new thing was when in March of this year, visual artist Beeple sold a piece of tokenized digital artwork for $69 million through Christie's auction house. But NFTs aren't exactly new. So what was so special about the Beeple Christie's trading that led to the NFT phenomenon taking off now?
Well, you're right. NFTs, they're not this new thing, but this Beeple Christie sale was really a landmark sale for the space for two reasons. The first is that the Beeple name and the Christie's name combined really added a lot of legitimacy to the space, right? Beeple is a very well-known artist, and then Christie's, of course, a very famous auction house. So if there's anyone wondering, can NFTs be art? The question was kind of answered, right? Because if it's in Christie's, it's probably art. The second reason is, of course, that $69 million number, right? Very nice number. A lot of people, their eyes kind of popped because $69 million, now that's rivaling a lot of, really, really famous, noteworthy art. And people were kind of saying, okay, if this digital art can sell for that much, there must be some value behind it, as shallow as that may seem. But.
So I guess many people saw the value, especially through this auction. And Eli, how do you think, now we're amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, how do you think the pandemic impacted the popularity of NFTs? And do you think had it not been for the pandemic, NFTs would have a different significance right now?
Well, it's hard to speculate about what our world would look like without the pandemic, right? But, I definitely think that the pandemic has contributed to the popularity of NFTs. One, because we're all in our homes a lot more. We're on our laptops, on our computers, and that's where NFTs live. So people have more exposure in that way. Another thing is just like the previous segment on today about the metaverse, right? Think about what we're really doing when we try to escape to these virtual realities, right? We're escaping from kind of our current life, and I think the pandemic has, for a lot of people, brought a lot of hardship that is worth escaping from. So when we talk about creating virtual worlds, right? I do think it's hard to ignore, the pandemic and the worlds we're trying to escape from.
And now let's turn to Professor Makridis. I'm actually very new to this topic as well, but I did some research, and it's my understanding that these NFT marketplaces can be characterized on a spectrum from streamlined to augmented. And can you explain for our viewers, how are these marketplaces different?
Yeah, there's actually a great Harvard Business Review article that kind of goes into more detail if those are curious. But Streamlined does a lot of the work for the artist. And so if you're totally new to the space, you might just decide, I've got some artwork and I want to experiment and get something out into the marketplace relatively quickly. And one of the most commonly known is OpenSea. But there's others, there's Rarible, there's plenty that are emerging, and they're all trying to compete. And this is one of the beautiful things, is that there is a lot of competition in this space. Compare that with much of the technology sector today, which is defined by just a few entities. And so there's a lot of competition. And then contrast the streamlined with more the augmented type, and that is for certain niche markets. And so if you have a lot of expertise and you've been in the space and you want to really cater to a particular set of individuals that might appreciate a particular form of art, then that might be the right option for you. But as you said, there's a spectrum, and we're going to see how this spectrum continues to evolve in the months and years ahead.
Well then, Professor, how do the creators determine which NFT marketplace to launch on?
Well, it's a question that I'm grappling with myself in the startup that I serve on, Living Opera. And I think one of what I'm essentially weighing is, and together with our CEO founder, Sila Parasidis, is around what's the cost of minting. And so when you upload to the distributed ledger, to the blockchain, you have to spend some amount of money to mint that token, because there's energy involved in producing it. Different platforms have different costs, and so one is just the cost of minting. Another, and this is probably the biggest, is what's the visibility that you'll be able to get? Because people and many of the brands out there, they have a lot of people that are plugging them on social media, that are doing PR around it. And so a really important thing that the artist needs to think about is, how are you going to reach your underlying consumer and get the word out? And different platforms have different deals. They're able to curate art. And so you just have to kind of look at the fine print and look at what's the package that the marketplace is going to be offering you as an artist.
Well, that was for creators, but for people who want to, buy the items, Eli, then how does one choose a marketplace to buy from, and what type of digital wallet can be used?
Well, I think choosing an NFT marketplace, it's a lot like choosing a grocery store, There are a lot of different products out there, and it really depends on what you're looking for, right? You have something like OpenSea, which is going to have more fees than other marketplaces, but you're also going to get some of the highest quality artwork on there. So in terms of wallets, right, it depends. You have networks like Ethereum, Solana. Some are faster, some have less fees. It's really a toss-up. Personally, I like a lot of the smaller marketplaces just because they're so cheap, they're so quick, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening on the smaller marketplaces right now that don't want to have to go through OpenSea, and they don't want to have to pay these big fees. So I would say, if you're in the market for some NFTs, definitely look around. You don't have to commit to just one marketplace, and there's nothing wrong with browsing around before you try them out.
Well, thank you. I'm sure that will be very helpful for people like me. But Eli, NFT trading is digital and non-fungible, and accordingly, there is the recurring question of volatility. Can you tell us about the risks regarding the value of NFTs as well?
Yeah, so the thing about NFTs, they are digital assets, but they come with an incredible amount of risk, right? Because the value is completely speculative for a lot of these things, right? You buy an image and one day you pay $1,000, the next day it's worth $2,000, and then the day after that it's worth nothing. So a big issue people have with it is, liquidity. If you were to go out today and go buy a piece of art, it would be pretty hard to just go the next day, out on the street and just sell that art right away, right? It takes some time. Some markets, there are more buyers, some there are less. So definitely, if you're interested in buying NFTs, you have to understand that this isn't just like a token, like something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, where you can just kind of trade back and forth, right? It's the value of it is much more speculative, so in that way it can be harder to sell and much more volatile as well.
And also, Professor Makridis, how about other risks that run with NFTs, such as legal issues of verification or authentication?
No, there's a lot to be resolved in the years ahead. I mean, one big specific question is, how does patent law line up with the blockchain? And what happens when there's potential pirating? How is that going to be resolved? How do governments come together? Right now, you have the USPTO and you have European Patent Office. And so I think that there's a lot of questions to resolve there. But what I would caution individuals is that just because all the answers are not out right now doesn't mean that there's not value creating properties there. That's new for any technology, and the beauty behind the blockchain is that there is, I believe, an extra layer of security. There's extra layer of transparency and accountability, and so just because there's some negative things that happen on the blockchain or with cryptocurrency or some speculation with NFTs doesn't defeat the value creation that's there. So I would just highlight a lot of these questions around interoperability between different legal frameworks and how lawyers and technologists can come together to work and create platforms, marketplaces, and architectures that do resolve those issues in the months ahead.
Now, turning back to Eli, having followed cryptocurrency and digital assets, can you say this is a passing craze, or is this the future of money?
Well, I think that when we think about NFTs, right now, it may seem like a fad. It may seem like all the attention's on NFTs. And right now, I think that, everyone's talking about NFTs and not many people are using them. So I think eventually this idea is going to flip, where the technology around NFTs is actually really remarkable. And I think that eventually people may not be buying and selling art, but I think that all of our housing deeds and medical records and gaming assets will be NFTs, and, people won't even know it. So while everyone's talking about them and no one's using them, I think eventually we're going to be in a world where everyone's using them and nobody's talking about them.
And Professor Makridis, what do you think? Is an NFT the big holiday gift of 2021?
Well, I think one of the really wise points that Ellie made in a couple places is about liquidity and also about what do you really have when you buy an NFT, and that just because there's a fad right now, is it going to stay in fashion? And so I think that people during the holidays, you need to be asking, am I buying something that actually contains value, or am I just buying something because I heard about it on social media? And so this is what we try to do within Living Operas, around the fine arts and around operas, creating things that are truly beautiful. Because you look at compositions by some of the classic artists over time, by Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. These are classic pieces, and they retain their value. But at the same time, there's a lot of art out there that doesn't always retain its value. So I would just encourage everybody listening that if you see something that really resonates with your heart and that you think has true value, it might be a great gift, and your friends and loved ones would love it.
All right. Well, I'm afraid we will have to wrap up at this point, but thank you so much, Professor Makridis and Eli, for your thoughts on this issue. It was a very interesting and a new discussion for me. I hope it was too for our viewers. Again, we appreciate your time and contribution to our show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.